You're listening to the Forest School podcast with Lewis Ames and Gemma Southerden.
And today and yesterday, you walk past it and you can see the roots are like lifting, and you can actually see it. So it's like run, run past it.
That is, we had that in the woods, didn't we? That tree next to the digging hole, and its roots would sometimes sort of crack the earth a little bit, which was, that was after a very, very dry spell though.
Well, that's kind of what's happened now though, isn't it? It's been really dry, and now it's rained loads, and now it's windy, so I wouldn't be surprised if loads of stuff.
Yeah, makes the soil dry, makes the soil wet, pull it out of the ground.
Just a good one.
Doesn't have a chance to like percolate down.
Although apparently it has percolate down the state.
You asked the worms.
I read a thing by the farmer man that owns Riverford Organic Vegetables.
Oh, right.
And he said that sometimes it'll be dry, and then I think he said last year it was dry and then torrential, so that's terrible for soil erosion. Whereas this time, on the first day that it started to rain in this rainy spell, it just did Devon light but constant rain, so it did have enough time to meet the water table.
Right, okay.
Before this torrential stuff.
Woo!
Rain chat.
Rain chat, because we are in the same room, inside.
And it's raining, and there's a big storm outside.
Yeah, highs of 45 miles an hour
Yes.
today, so no session work for us. Just planning. My study wall is covered in post-it notes. I'm planning the level 3 and trying to find that balance between everything that we want to include and time to digest.
Time to play.
Time to play. Time to not be like blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Just to.
And we got the balance just right.
Of course.
It's perfect.
It's absolutely perfect.
It's going to be perfection. And really fun.
Yeah, and not windy.
No, well, it's because it's going to get it all out of its system right now, so there won't be any wind left in the world to happen the week after next. So it's all right. It's all right. It's going to be a heat wave. Going to make a paddling pool. Going to spend the whole time playing the paddling pool.
Would you rather be too hot or too cold if you had to pick one?
Well, I was going to say there's no such thing as too hot, so that probably means I'd rather be
me too.
too hot. But it's never too hot in the woods, ever. Even in a heat wave.
No. Oh, I just mean in general.
Oh,
like,
okay. Yeah, no.
I feel like I'm slightly solar powered.
Yeah.
Like, I will take all of the sunshine that you can give me.
Definitely.
There's probably people listening in like arid countries now going, shut up with your rain. And
exactly.
but such is life. You borrowed one of my books this week.
Yeah.
Or these last couple of weeks. You borrowed Primitive Technology, a survivalist guide to building tools, shelters and more in the wild by John Plant.
Yeah.
Had you seen his YouTube channel before?
Yeah, I had, but I think only because you alerted me to it several years ago.
Okay.
So when you gave me the book, I was like, oh, it's that naked guy. So it's the naked guy who's on YouTube, and he's got like hours and hours of footage, and he doesn't speak. He just like does stuff, and the camera's just pointing at him, and he does it. And then I think he was anonymous for a while, and then he only revealed his name when people were trying to pass off his videos as them or something like that.
He's spawned like this whole genre on YouTube of people now doing similar things, and basically it should be called cob buildings, because it's now like, I made the world's most amazing cat palace, and it's just this cob thing with a waterfall and it's just cob on cob on cob.
Yeah.
And like a lie where so John Plant, like, he goes really slow and his videos are really sparse, like in terms of how frequent they are, because it's just him. He goes off and he does this stuff. The sort of copycat videos, because they're financially motivated, they have like 2 minutes of them digging with a stick, and then it like cuts and they've dug like a 20 foot by 20 foot trench, and it goes down 30 meters, and they're like, oh, just with sticks.
Yeah.
Some people will know Primitive Technology. Not many people, I think, know that it is originally a blog, and he just filmed it to remind himself while he was writing the blog.
Right.
And if you turn the captions on, his blog is so he doesn't speak in the videos, but as the video is playing, the text comes up as a caption and goes, here I did this and I found this really tricky and this bit was in here and I couldn't quite get that. So it doesn't take anything away from the video, because I think there is something therapeutic about just going as he's making.
Yeah, well, it is very realistic, as you say, like, as opposed to these other ones that are edited and sped up and stuff. That very slow, very like, oh, that's how long it takes to do that thing, and that's how hard you have to work, and really gets to that root of that's how long it would take to have done things in the past. You know, if you wanted to have a fire from scratch.
Yeah, or a furnace. There's one where he smelts iron ore in a cob furnace, and it's absolutely or one he makes something like 100 and something roof tiles, all with
Adobe.
With a little lip.
Yeah.
So and then he fires them all in a kiln and lays them all.
Yeah.
And it's just this like incredible, like how valuable.
Yeah.
Just a roof is in terms of time.
Yeah. And it's just his hobby, isn't it? Like I did read a bit of his blog, and he was like, I think it was on the frequently asked questions bit. He was like, I don't actually live naked in the bush in Australia. This is just a hobby. I live in a normal house and I eat normal food, and I just do this as a hobby.
Yeah, well, I would say that's one difference between the Primitive Technology book and YouTube channel and stuff, and the sort of extreme survival side of things, where you would never get to a point as a like, I've been dropped on an island. Can I survive with what? Because in his videos, the Primitive Technology guy, he's not worrying about food. He's not talking about his shelter. He's not talking about his like basic human needs. He's just going, if that's all sorted because I live in a normal house and I do whatever, this is the experience of making all these terracotta roof tiles, or this is so it's a different genre to that thing of, okay, I've got 4 mice left. I've been drying out the jerky from that buzzard that came too close last week. I'll never, it's not primitive survival. It is genuinely an exploration of like, playing and...
It's just playing and going, what if I didn't have any modern stuff? What would I do?
And I think that's what makes it more closely related to Forest School. Definitely. Because you can watch this stuff and you can look in, the kids have looked through the books a few times and you kind of go, oh, okay, that's fine. It's not like, here's how you strap a leg cast together if you meet a bear. It's like, do you want to do this fun thing where you make... activated charcoal.
Yeah, and it's not that different to stuff they might already come up with through their own play.
Yeah.
That's what I quite like about it. And I was reading it with my son, and he was just getting really excited and going, can we do this? Oh yeah, I actually found a flint like that the other day, and I wanted to make it into an axe. And it's all very, like primal. Already, as I said before, just things that you might already think of if you are a kid with loads of free time in a woods with natural resources like stones and clay and wood and fire. You would kind of almost stumble across these ideas anyhow. Yeah. And what I quite like about it is that when you're a kid and you come up with like some scheme about like building a house or whatever, and then either an adult tells you that's unrealistic and unachievable, you're never going to be able to do that, or you discover it through your own play, and you're like, but all of these things are kind of like, they are really basic and have been achieved, which is what I really like about it. So it's kind of empowering to read some of his things and go, oh my god, but you literally can just make a house out of mud from the ground. Whereas that's the kind of idea you might have as a kid and just have a little daydream about, like, I want to build a mud house in the woods and like sleep in it, and then an adult goes, oh, you absolute thicko, you can't do that. You can't build a house out of mud. But you can, and he's done it. And you can see the pictures of it. Yeah,
I think his books do sometimes... The book suffers a little bit from... we call it The Rest of the Fucking Owl. Have you seen this thing?
No.
So it's like a meme of like how-to drawings. And it's like, draw 2 ovals, draw 2 triangles, draw the rest of the fucking owl. And I think sometimes there's bits of that where, so in the book, you can see it and he's like, this is how to make a single clay brick. Then it's like, I made several of these, and then the picture is like a 3-bed house with, it's sort of, it would be interesting to hear. I mean, that's not the point of this book. The point of the book is like purely the technology of it. I think there would be something really interesting to hear about his thoughts and his like mental state making several hundred bricks. What does that level of like monotony, focus, repetition, what does that do to your brain? What does that do to how you think about things? Yeah.
What's that other Ben Law? You know that Ben Law book, which is called like Woodcraft, or is it all Woodcraft? I think they're quite nice, like companion books
Yeah.
in that way. That they both do things like walls and fences and stuff that you can make just with things you could find in the forest. But primitive technology has got that kind of more sort of basic side to it in terms of it's just like if you were going to play with some clay, this is where you could take it. And I think it is very child friendly, this book. It's the kind of book where if you did leave it lying around at forest school over lunchtime or break time, somebody flicks through it and goes, oh cool, I want to do this. Whereas the Ben Law one's a little bit more like, as a leader, as an adult, you would flick through it and go, oh cool,
why don't we make some hurdles?
Yes.
Which is a big project. And it's also more resource heavy. I think what this book has got going for it is, because so much of it is clay or like small amounts of sticks, it lends itself to play because it's not precious about the resources. If you cack up a clay thing,
you just smash it up.
You just smash it. You just start it again. But cutting down loads of hazel and making chestnut fencing, or doing anything like that in the Ben Law book is quite like, okay guys, we're actually making a fence. Like that chestnut tree is a couple of 100 years old. Maybe we don't do whatever. I think the thing that I like about it's got a level of functionality about it that isn't trivial. So there's lots of very good whittling books, for example. That is a genre of book where the projects are all very maybe more like on the whimsical side of things. Like, hey, here's a whimmy diddle. Here's a little elder shooter thing, and those are perfect for some children. They meet some needs. They're like engaging in a different way. This book just has like bow, arrow, axe, this type of house, this type of guttering. Here's a it's
fish trap. There's a nice like woven fish trap in there.
It meets. There's a lot of children that we work with who have got that. It's almost like a self-sufficiency urge, or like I can be valuable to the community urge, because that's where I think a lot of the motivation comes from. How often, and I think this is a really nice thing, children in our sessions will explain to us a project they want to do, and the reason they want to do it is already because they want to give it to someone, or already I'm going to make this because then when people want to do this thing, I'll have made a thing for them.
That's very true. I'm going to dig the steps of the digging hole to make it easier to get in and out of, because some people can't manage this thing, or like we were just talking about this week, I want to build a pulley system so that we can then pick the beech leaves for everybody to eat, to have the stores of the food, and it's easier for everybody, and then when they get hungry from digging the pond, which is what happened this week, they can just go to the special pulley place and get themselves beech leaves from the store. And it doesn't really matter that you can literally go to the beech tree just next door and pick it. That's not the point. It's that this has been designed.
I'm providing a service.
Yes.
Which is, and I think, something that we work quite hard, because we've because we've intentionally gone away from external, rewards, motivation, all that stuff, and towards internal stuff. And it's sometimes easy to miss that as like, that is because we have articulated constantly, so-and-so looks happy with what you've just given them, so-and-so looks at, and then that becomes a kind of like, oh, I'll do this, that will make people happy, that will...
Yes, and I would say that there is also, don't you think, like, it shows you that there is an innate, intrinsic motivation to, like, community build through play.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're kind of really digging deep into the evolutionary reasons for play, then, and kind of play being like little mini democracies, little societies, little communities, those examples really illustrate that in terms of, well, yeah, I'm only a child, only in inverted commas, and I don't have the strength, stroke skill, stroke ability to catch a whole deer to feed my community, but I can, through play, sort of do my best to kind of imitate adult behaviour, even if that isn't killing a deer. It is doing something as small as it can be to sustain the community, to give back.
It's a first go at like innovation.
Yeah.
In a way that I think I'm just wondering now, as the thought has come into my head, whether you can have innovation, like selfish innovation, whether there have been any inventions. So I'm imagining there's some to do with like the military or that kind of thing. But like if I think about the majority of inventions, they probably, from adults, still come with that pitch of, I think this will help people do this. that is what, it's very rare that someone invents something for themselves, they entirely keep it for themselves, and they go, this won't help anyone else, so I won't like, oh no, I'm wondering if that's just capitalism.
There is, I think it is...
Scrap it all.
I think it is in the evolutionary playwork book, where there is a kind of like example of, so that theory, Bob Hughes' theory there, is that through different ages of the child, they are playing out and reenacting evolutionary stages of humankind.
Mm-hmm.
And here there's a little grid in that book, I think somewhere, where it is like between the ages of 4 and 6, children will be doing this kind of thing, and then as the child gets older, it's like early teenage years, it's like gardening and agriculture. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So this kind of, I don't know, somehow this book sort of feeds into that, and I think can be used as a resource to kind of prompt that kind of play, or to almost justify it if it's already happening. Do you know what I mean? So somebody's already interested in pottery, or like digging clay out of the ground, and then you kind of leave this book around, or go, oh, I actually read something the other day where a guy was using that clay to do this,
Yeah.
and it can kind of like prompt, and it seems wrong to say like legitimize it, but
Well, I was just wondering, I think on a similar lines, it's something to do with like self-worth and sort of. So lots of, I'm reading the Anthropology of Childhood, and lots of that is talking about the age at which children come out of childhood. For lots of societies, there's like prepubescent and afterwards. For some, it's like there's babies who can't walk, and then there are adults. And that is it. Like, once they can walk confidently, they are like, okay, come on, keep up. You're just a rubbish adult at that point. But I wonder if you're not a rubbish adult, if stuff like this building, like, cob bricks and, furnaces made out of clay and stuff like that, that is achievable to a 4-year-old. You are valuable to the community a lot earlier. And I wonder what effect that has had over the long term of like human history, that more and more what children do is like in their own society, like, oh, okay, that's valuable in school, oh, okay, that's valuable in whatever, and then like once you get out of it, you go, none of that really counts. Like when you've done your GCSEs, you think they're the most important thing in the world. You do your A levels, and people go, don't care about your GCSEs anymore. It's like a weaning out of everything you've done before is.
Exactly. It's kind of like, as you were talking there, I was just thinking about, lots of like homeschooling families and communities would maybe argue that they are following that more primal almost route. I'm not talking about like they're getting their kids to like dig clay. I'm talking about more like
getting them down the mines.
Yeah. No. Just, you are a child, you just do the stuff that adults are doing.
You help make the dinner.
You help it. Yeah. Because it isn't like, oh, you are a child and so your brain needs to be filled with stuff. You just learn through living the life of the community that you're in, and learning by watching, observing and doing with all of the community members that you're with. And that being more kind of in line with the kind of childhood you're talking about. And then I was thinking about school and going, well, how much, one person might argue that school is designed to give back to society because you are kind of training young people and children to have the skills that they're going to need to help the community. Or you could argue that it's actually doing the opposite, and that it's a very capitalist machine which is very individualistic and is constantly going, listen, children, you need to quell all of your natural instincts and impulses now, and listen to me and fill your brain full of this, because you and you alone are going to need this when you're older, and if you don't do this, you're going to be homeless, you're going to have no money, you're going to have no future. You need to think about yourself here. Don't worry about what they're doing, don't focus on them, concentrate on your own work. Your work, it's your work, and you're working by yourself, and that occasionally you might do some group work, but really it's all about your progress, and reflect on your progress and reflect on what you've learned, and have you reached this level yet? Do you know what I mean? And that therefore you could argue that actually it is completely sort of anti-community and very...
Well, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I think you're right that a lot of schooling is individualistic in terms of you need to be, especially at the start, when there's that thing of we're going to teach you everything and then you pick which things you want to follow. But before that, you get this thing of like, you must be good at maths, right? You just have to be, blah, 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 blah. And then you become an adult, overnight, you wake up, you're an adult, and And the working world goes, well, don't worry about that. There's accountants. Well, don't worry about that because actually the creative design team make that thing. And unless you... And then there are people, like us, we're self-employed, so we do wear more hats. There are certain things. But even we go, this is out of my remit. Hey, there's a community locally, we've got an accountant, we've got, we reach out to people and do all that stuff. I was reading something, I was briefly flicking through John Cree and Marina Rubb's new book, which is like incredible, annoyingly good. And we were talking about, there was a bit we were talking, like I'm having a chat with him. I'll tell you, right, so...
He said some things and you went, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think John will mind me telling me. I was emailing John about something the other day, and I needed a time to talk to him. And about 3 days later, after I'd talked to him, he phoned me, and I went, "Oh, you're right." And he went, "Yes, now isn't a good time to talk, I'm afraid." Why have you phoned me? Anyway, but sorry, we're talking about picking up all of the like sensory information, and that like well-being and nature connection comes from not excluding some of your input channels at the expense of others. So like you're saying about schooling is like quell your natural urges, don't look at the window, don't worry about the breeze that's coming in, don't interact with those stuff, but and focus on the academic, focus on your brain, do whatever. But doing stuff like primitive technology, it by the nature of what it is, you have to feel the stick. You have to feel the, you could probably accommodate it with like, okay, rubber gloves if someone's got a sensory thing or doing whatever, but actually it's so tactile and so knowing how thick the clay needs to be to make a brick is not a thing that you can write down an academic. I mean, you probably can. That's how we've got bricks now. No one could mass produce bricks.
But somebody has done it through trial and error in the beginning. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what this book can inspire with groups. And that if you were a leader maybe who is near the beginning of their journey and you're just beginning to work with groups and you're observing where their play is taking them and thinking about different springboards you could offer, reading this book would definitely make you engage with that very primal mud play, charcoal stuff. And I'm going to say like legitimise it again, like make it a viable thing as opposed to just like, oh, there's just some mud there and there's just it's like can be used as a springboard to go, well, it could go in this direction, and it's legitimate. It's a legitimate thing that can result in a really useful item if you want to take it that far.
Yeah. And there's something about stuff like primitive technology has, I think, inbuilt into it, like senescence.
What's that?
Senescence is like natural decay.
Okay.
So, like we naturally decay, like things naturally get to the end. So if you make a perfect clay kiln, like you have a group of learners and they make a perfect clay kiln, there isn't a way of making that perfect forever. It can't be done. So from a leader perspective, it's really nice to have stuff that, like we recently, the kids, we smashed the rocket stove. We needed to move it. We did something, I think you and I were intending to rebuild it at some point, but the kids kind of went, or a few of the kids went, we're going to make that.
Yeah.
And fully, they didn't need us. It was just, and it was an experimentation in like, what level of straw can we put in and it will still stick these fire bricks together, and what if we cover it in this, and what if we,
It's an amazing project.
Yeah, it was so good. But I know, looking at it, and actually this is what was interesting about having a mixed age group, is so the kids that were, I'm going to say, leading that thing, majority of them between 9 and 11. There were a couple nearby who were sort of 6, 7-ish. And in my head, I was already going, I bet you're going to remember this when that gets smashed and it's you that builds the next one.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is kind of missing. If you don't see, that's, again, another chance for, like, innovation of, like, oh, I remember the rocket stove, and they vaguely build it, and you build it. It's a bit like natural evolution, you build something slightly wrong, and you go, that made it even better, or, okay, that's not made it as good. And I've worked with schools before who've tried to do a thing, but because of how sort of isolated it is, it's like, year 3 made these tiles on the side of the thing.
Yeah.
And then it goes on 10 years, And they go, we're going to redo the tiles, and none of the kids saw this tiles being made. None of them, engaged with it. It's too long. Whereas at Forest School, I think we have this thing of being able to see it and going, that cyclical thing of like, okay, my turn to, like that group, my turn to watch on it was this time. My turn to lead on it is probably next time.
Yeah.
And they'll probably have someone younger than them then watching it going, you can have these projects that go and go and go. And I think that's really useful.
I think so too, and I think there's an amazing sustainability lesson through all of this stuff, through all of this, like, if you're kind of widening out primitive technologies, like building stuff in the woods with mostly natural materials, then I was just thinking about the pond. So we had like one go at making a nature pond, reusing an old paddling pool liner for the liner, and loads of us had a go at that and doing various bits on it and hammering the liner to some logs, and we discovered the ground was really hard where we wanted to dig it, so instead we raised the sides with logs, and then it didn't really result in something that was pleasurable to either look at or use for humans or animals. So we had a second go at it this week, and by no means finished it, and that's fine, but we talked about what happened last time and how we're doing it this time, and how the ground conditions are different because it's a different time of year and it's easier to dig, and we use pickaxes this time instead of spades, and we cut the and we were like, I need to buy a new thing. Oh no, we don't need to buy a new thing, we can just cut the liner to a different shape, of course, that's easier. And that lesson about like something isn't serving you as well, or it has begun to decay, and we have the ability to think about how to fix that rather than just buying a new one, which is what I mean, we're very fortunate with our site, we always say that, but I think we're fortunate that it is far away from human habitation. It's far away from a building that we could just go into to get a human-made resource. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you go, we just can't get there, haven't got any more string. How can we do it instead? Or, we could order that on the internet, but it's going to take a week to arrive. So do we really need to do that? I think that's an amazing sustainability lesson.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's something especially doing this stuff with children. So some of the stuff in this book is, like we're saying, it's stuff that you would stumble upon, but he has kind of, I don't know whether he's done it by trial and error, but he's kind of gone like, I'm going to burn this axe, and the video that you see and the photos that are in the book are of the result of it working. It doesn't have examples of like, oh, this snapped, oh, this broke. But a bit like that drama game of like, this is not, where you hold up a thing and you go around like, this is not a thing, this is whatever. Anything that you try to make with this, if you tried to make an arrow and it didn't work, you've got a stick for stabby foot, or you've got a thing for, if you tried to make a house and it didn't quite work, you've got a big old mud pile for jumping in. You've got a, even when these things go what might be considered like, if you were being really harsh about it, you would go like, they failed the project, the project has not worked. But it can't not work, because one, you can always reuse the resources.
Yeah.
But two, anything that you come out that is a mishap, maybe, is still valuable, possibly even more valuable in a different sense.
Yeah, and that's evolution, isn't it? That is like invention. That is playing around with something with maybe an end goal in sight, and it didn't work out, but you invent something new. You have no idea what's going to happen. I bloody love it. I bloody love things like the other day, about 3 weeks ago, it was like the end of the day, and we were kind of getting kids up to where they're collected, and I went down to a kid to go, we're going this way, and they was like, I've a sun, and they just stuck a stick in the ground, but it was something about where the sun was in the sky, and that particular bit of the woods that didn't have canopy cover, and they were just mesmerised, so they were like looking at it, and they still would, I'm gonna go, it's kind of home time now, but that is freaking amazing, and I don't know how to reconcile these two things. But they wouldn't move, because they were like, I've marked the time on the ground, like this is where the shadow was, and it's already moved, and I was just like, that is probably what happened. Exactly what's happened now is probably what happened the first time a human being invented a sundial. The only difference is that you know the word sundial, but I bet you didn't start out going, I wonder what I should do now. I think I'll make a sundial. I'm going to stick a stick in the ground. You probably just stuck a stick in the ground and then noticed what was happening, and noticed that the shadow was a line, and noticed that the line was moving. Bloody love it, man. Love it.
I do think these projects, yeah, you're right. They encourage more noticing, because you have to be in contact with a lot more information than just one narrow channel. We had somebody a couple of weeks ago now, who had brought in a toolbox and had said, "Can we make some pretend tools?"
Mhm.
And his idea was to make wooden tools. He wanted to kind of. I think what it was that he had thought that was the most he would be allowed to do.
Mhm.
So
Or be able to.
Well,
Do you think with this?
I don't think it was be
Skill
able.
level?
I think it was a preemptive safety check on themselves,
Right.
to go, I know tools are dangerous, so
Yeah.
I won't ask to make tools.
Yeah.
I mean, he should have really had the thought process that went, but Lewis is slightly negligent, so maybe he'll. Because I immediately turned around and went, what if we made real ones out of flint?
Yeah.
And he just was like, that was it. That was the day. Was
Yeah.
like, oh my god, you're right, we actually could.
Yeah.
And experimenting with how it flaked off. And
Mm.
we actually had a really interesting conversation about, so he'd gone looking for rocks and had come back with a few. And we have chert.
Mhm.
Is it and chert is flint? It's a branch of flint?
I can't remember which way around it is now. It's either flint is a type of chert or chert is a type of flint. I can't remember.
Okay, someone will know. We have chert. So it's not quite, it gets sharp, but it's not flint.
Mm.
And he'd picked up this rocket. He was really struggling with reconciling what was going on in his head and what he was able to manipulate the stone into.
Yeah.
So this thing of like, I think in his head he was making like a Flint, the cartoon, the Flintstones level of like, it will look like an axe.
Mm.
It will look exactly like an axe that is made out of metal, but I will have made it out of flint. And we ended up having an interesting conversation about sort of like making do, and I know it's a derogatory term, but like bodging, and just kind of going like, is that sharp? Yes. Well, I bet you the person. I did a lot of I wonders, so it's just kind of nearby going, I wonder if the first person to ever make a flint tool made it perfectly how they imagined. Or I wonder if anybody's ever made exactly the tool they wanted the first time. And that's a huge learning thing from, and I think it we talk about this a lot because we've got an absolute bee in our bonnet about it, but I think it is a product of Craftivities, is that like,
this is what a good one looks like.
this is what a good one looks like, and like, that you will be able to achieve that, and that this is maybe one of the things, if you were defining a Craftivity, is that it's like, it's a one-shot success. You don't need 2 or 3 goes at doing this to get the result. You have, because it's all about efficiency, it's like, you get one go at this, you're at the table for 5 minutes and then you get moved off to the next thing, and so this isn't something you need to learn how to do quickly, it's perfectly in your, and so then to be presented with something that was, he really, really wanted to do this thing and make it look like the thing, but to be met with this challenge of like, I'm gonna have to come back to this.
Yeah.
Is a massive experience.
It really is. I love it when it happens the other way around, and a child has made something that you can't really understand, but they really can. So you might look at it and immediately think, oh well, I can see what they were going for, but they've really not nailed it. But in their head, they really have, and they're like, "This is my new system for the thing." And you're like, "Great." To me, it looks like a bit of string tied to a branch, but you are really dead chuffed with it. I love when that happens. I love it. As you were talking, I was also thinking about projects that involve, like, it might be one person's idea to make the clay bricks or change the steps to the digging hole or whatever, but then other people are watching and going, that looks hella fun, I want to be involved. And then you end up with a kind of really organic, like, human factory where somebody goes, okay, well, can I help? And then either the person leading it goes, you can, but I kind of want to do this bit.
They immediately puff up their chest like, actually.
Yeah. Or they go, well, can you dig the clay while I do the thing? Or the new person suggests that and goes, I could help by clearing the ground for you or whatever, and you end up with like a little miniature manufacturing community where everyone's kind of got the thing that they're doing really serious, and everyone, that's really interesting as well when that organically happens.
Yeah, made me think again. again, of the opposite. So when that doesn't happen, because equally, so one of the things that we really have been working on for a while with this, one of the projects that we've got going, is like this long time, trying to remove as much as possible that pressure of like time is running out, or this is the only chance you get to do that thing.
Yeah.
Everything can be repeated. Everything is very like, don't worry, we're here again tomorrow. Don't worry, we've got this thing. Don't worry, we've got, it always starts with don't worry, don't worry. But in sessions where we have had like a time constraint, and so this stuff, like we've said, primitive technology stuff is monotonous, right? So it's simple but monotonous, and so it's very physically achievable and social and emotionally sometimes quite tricky, because that's an unfamiliar skill of like just doing the same thing.
Or having to do a stage before you do the stage that you want to do.
So this is the bit that I was going to get to, where we've had over the years many experiences of people going, I want to, so like actually it came from this book. I brought this book in and had a group who wanted to then make essentially like a hazel, what do you call it when the hazel stick goes like in out, you put posts in?
Wattle and daub.
Wattle and daub, that's it. So they wanted to make a wattle and daub house. And we had originally we had to scale the plan down because this person wanted to make like a full on like absolute building.
And then other people got involved, and it was going to have 2 stories and a tunnel over the part, like a
it was going to be like a toll gate.
Yeah.
Incredible. But this person spent got themselves quite like agitated, I'm going to say, because they were going, we just need like loads of sticks. And you and I think, had exactly the same response of like, okay, cool, I can see some over there, maybe over there. Do you want to come get some? No, I can't. But can you get all the sticks and bring them here? Yeah. And like trying to think about that. Do you know what I mean? That kind of like, there's a lot of monotony and brunt work, and not like physically taxing, just like
it's taking away from the energy that I need to do the fun, exciting bit that I'm imagining, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like using my spoons in a way that is really unrewarding for me right now, and also I might forget the idea that I had about the weaving of the sticks, because that's the main exciting part that I want to do that I've never done before. I've picked up sticks before, and now to do that, it's boring to me, and it's costing me spoons that I could be using on my new thing.
Yeah,
it's so interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, how do you answer that request? Where it comes probably every day, we get a request like that.
Oh yeah.
I want to make a fire, but I don't want to do the prep. I want to make a thing, but can you just do this really tricky?
I want this to be a weapon. Can you completely strip this of bark and do this and tie a handle on it?
And how do we as adults respond to that? Is it always the same blanket answer, or is it like flexible depending on the learner, or depending on the time, or depending on, because I'm definitely flexible about that. I often,
of course.
I'm often like, the thing is, if I make it for you, like, will that still be your thing? I kind of phrase it back to them as a philosophical question sometimes, and you kind of see them.
I just tell them, then it will be mine. Like, if I make this, then it will be my sword. So what are you going to find me with?
Funny. But sometimes you can kind of feel that thing I just said about, well, I don't want to do the boring bit because I know how to do that, and I want to flex my new potential skill in this area. And if you get that vibe, you can go, cool, I completely get that. You haven't ever used an axe before, and that's the bit you really want to get to. So that's fine. I will do that, because the thing you want to get to is big enough and important enough of itself to be worth skipping over.
Or it can be about levelling the playing field. If you've got a game that involves mixed age children, the big ones are going, well, we can get this thing and we can make it, and we've been here a bit longer, so we can do this. And there's 7-year-old going, I really want to join in, but my competency isn't up to making that thing fast enough, or whatever. You go, fine, I'll just get you involved in that bit.
Yeah.
Because you go, next time might be the time that there's less pressure on it. We just kind of go through. I think this book, you were saying it was quite achievable, and so you were showing it to your son, and he was like, I want to make this and I want to make this thing. I'm wondering if, just thinking about that idea of like, I don't want to do the boring thing, if looking through the book you would get a sense of, so when you watch his videos, you get this sense at the end when it's just a still shot of the fire is going in front of a house.
Yeah.
If you just saw that last shot, you would be like, yeah, that looks like a hut. but because you've watched 8 minutes beforehand, you know how important it is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the book skips something in that because you can flick to the last picture? You don't have to read the other bits. So the book is kind of giving you a false impression of like, yeah, okay, dig the mud, do whatever, blah, blah, blah.
I know what you mean. I think if you were literally trying to make the stuff from the book as like the book as possible, then yeah, I think it does skip over some kind of key bits. But if you're sort of using it, I guess I'm thinking about it...
Like an instruction manual.
Yeah, so if you're not thinking of it in like an instruction manual and you're more thinking... Because I'm looking at it through the lens of one of our main groups, I think, they're not... Maybe a couple of them would sometimes like to use it as an instruction manual, but most of them, it would be like a coffee table book that would inspire possibilities with natural materials, and therefore I think it's fine because you aren't trying to get necessarily to that finished product. You are going, this person's made a fish trap out of woven sticks. I want to do that. And actually, you probably don't end up with a fish trap, but you do start weaving with sticks, which you've never done before.
It's a book of springboards.
Yes, that's what I think.
Do you think it would be a different book if, I'm not suggesting we do this by any stretch, if it was primitive technology done by children? So if it was one, would you just include successful stuff? And two, would it change the impact of the book on children seeing another child doing it?
Yeah. There's a whole, have you seen adverts? I don't know what they're called. Maybe we should try and get them on the podcast. But there's somebody who runs, it isn't Forest School, it is like primitive technology. It's like Stone Age Club or something.
Right.
It's on Dartmoor.
Not Will Lord.
I don't know, maybe.
Okay.
It's a dude and he runs this club and all the photos are just like children.
Will Lord is a scare. Have you seen, do you know Will Lord?
Oh, no, the guy with the cape.
The flint napping.
No, not, the guy, do you mean the guy with the cape who shoots stuff with children?
No.
That's a different person.
No, that's different. Will Lord is like, he wears a flayed wolf like head as a head, and he's like a flint napping person. He's not far from here.
Oh right, maybe it is him then.
I say he's not far from here, like I can see him coming over the hill. Like he's not far. But yeah.
Yeah, but this person may or not be this guy. He will teach the skill, the like Stone Age skill. Today we are all flint napping. Today we are all doing what's it. And the photos are really cool because they are kids all just getting on with it and doing it. And it's a different thing. But yeah.
Do you think we lose something in that? Because do you think so? This book is very, I'm gonna say like clean, like sanitized. It's very clean. It's very like, that's why it's sold so well. That's why the YouTube thing works so well, because like I said at the start, it's not about I've had to gut a fish to survive. Like, it's all very clear. There's no the shots are all very well composed, and it's all very like, it's like middle class recapitulative play, I think. So do you think you lose something if we're talking about it in a holistic way? Do you think that these skills in some way need that, like, so for us in the UK, it would be like these sort of skills would be connected to Celtic history and the spiritualism that comes with, Celtic stuff, or Anglo-Saxon stuff, Viking stuff that came over. That, like, the forge is like a thing. There's spirits in the fire. There's whatever else. But if you just read this book, you just get a very clean, in inverted commas, like a sciencey, like, it must have a draft. It must be up here. Do you think doing primitive stuff in that kind of sterile way loses something? I've got an email.
Quick, read it. Maybe you've won a prize. Oh my god. Well, that's a massive question, because that comes down to, it kind of refers back to the conversation we had with Jenny on the podcast, and whether you wants to, as an adult in the forest, kind of tell kids these things and go, well, the elder tree has this spirit in it, so when we cut some, we must blah. Or whether you want to invite or teach the primitive technology, or facilitate it, or make space for it, or whatever, and then wait and see what comes up in terms of, if they decide there's a spirit in the fire, then that's what they have decided, and that there is, I would argue, that if you give space and time to these types of play, that stuff will inevitably kind of come up. So a bit like with the Iron Age house that you referred to that wanted to be built, the Waldorf house. That started as that, and it started very much as a construction project, and that person who wanted to build it needed help, and so recruited loads of people. But of course, the construction kind of took second stage because what happened was 2 tribes were born. And one tribe had a face paint of a certain type and the other tribe had a face paint of a different type, and this face paint meant that you had been in a battle. So if you had this dot on your face, then it meant that you had fought one of the other team, and actually now we're under attack and now we need to get our weapons ready because blah blah blah. And the house kind of fades into the, but it was the starting point. It was the crucible for that very recapitulative play. But but the spirit, if they'd had more time, because that whole thing stopped because of COVID, didn't it? That whole play cycle that was just like this long, ever-evolving, magical thing had to come to a real harsh end. But the spiritual element of it was beginning to grow, and I think would have grown. So I don't think that needed us or anyone else to go, well, the Vikings who would have made this type of house, or the Iron Age people who made this house would have believed that, blah, 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 blah. Because in this new replayed out version of that life and those humans, there was a new spirituality that was happening in terms of, this is our symbol, this is a symbol of our tribe because blah, and therefore we're going to decorate the roof of the house with this thing because this is our tribal symbol because we live near the beech tree. That kind of chat was happening already, so that's kind of what I think. There you go, there's an answer to that question.
That was a good answer.
Deep, man.
It was.
So I kind of prefer the fact that it's just like, here's a thing, I'm not going to go, which I kind of was wondering, I haven't given you the Children's Forest book.
No, not yet.
But I will, because that is more of that sort of stuff. It's way more about like our ancestors ate these foods and our ancestors believed, and this tree is a symbol of this, and so it is giving you that side of things. And you could argue for both, I think. But right now I'm going to go with just the clean springboard thing. You can lay over the top what you want in terms of what it means, the symbolism.
Okay, and the check is on a level 3 reading list, on a forest school leader's must read, on a maybe a few years down the line, is it? So that's the benchmark.
That's the benchmark.
Well, it's just a check, is it?
I wouldn't say it's a must read, but I would say that early on in forest school journey, useful, inspiring, yes.
I agree. I think if you read it too early in your training, you could get it could lead you down a very skill heavy, product heavy, it's not forest school if we haven't made bows in this way. It's not forest school if we haven't connected in this way, if the hut doesn't look like this.
Which I think is already not danger, but is already a thing that happens, because I think when you're early on your journey or training, then you inevitably do a lot of things which are like product focused, because you have to, for part of your training, you have to demonstrate your competency with certain tools, which always, often ends in a finished product. And I think, I don't know if it's just me, but at the beginning of my journey, I certainly would plan activities with a kind of end goal in mind, and I would often in my brain pitch it too high in terms of, they'll definitely concentrate for I remember my very first ever activity that I led with a group of kids on my level 3 with another forest school leader in training was like making reindeer, like mini ones, not like those big ones that you see, but
drilling loads of holes,
finding the holes that look like, and finding the sticks that look like antlers that will fit in the holes in the head, finding the legs, it was like so concentrated, and in our minds we're like, it's simple, it's just like a mini version of it, super easy. Oh my god,
big learning for you guys.
Yeah, massive. So I think that is kind of a danger, that you think, oh yes, we'll do this project and it will have an ending and it will all be wrapped up neatly, and then we'll move on to another thing. And in fact, it's sort of just about mucking about, isn't it?
Well, I wrote a very long, people who are in the Facebook group were in some of the, I'm not going to say which Facebook group I put it in, but somebody was talking in one of the groups this morning that they had the email, which we have had, I don't know a forest school leader that hasn't had it, and they'd put the email in, but they'd blanked out all the personal information. My child has come home caked in mud.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot see how this is valuable.
Mm.
I understand that they were encouraged to get in the mud.
Mm.
All my child has learned is how to mop my floor, how to wash her. It was like a real I don't see any value in this. What is going on? I can't believe you would encourage that. And this person had put in, what should I do? And there were quite a few responses, and it was becoming a bit of a one, it's an echo chamber,
yes.
right? You're talking to people who already think this thing. But as I was reading it more and more, a lot of the comments were just along the lines of well, that's what you do at Forest School. Well, that's what you do. And ended up writing quite a long thing where I was kind of saying, what's happened in that email is someone has come back and said, I do not understand your risk-benefit analysis here. I understand that the detriment is my child has come home muddy, and I can't see a risk. I'm not aware of a risk. A benefit, sorry. I'm not aware of a benefit. Please could you tell me the benefit? And if your benefit, reason or defence, is just well, that's what Forest School is, then I think you've really sold yourself short. Because what that says to me is when you were watching that happen, all you were thinking was, that's Forest School. Rather than, as we know, there's all the vestibular stuff, there's the sensory stuff, there's the social emotional stuff, there's all of this stuff going on in mud play. But if the only reason that you're doing it is that's what we do at Forest School, I think you could end up in a similar situation with this book where you go, well, that's how you make a bow and arrow. Without any thought about what do they actually want to do. They want it for war games. Well, what's important here? What's important is them, learn, they've experienced that some of the trees snap or that you can't just get one off the floor. If you just have this thing of, well, that's what Forest School is, or well, that's what the project should be.
Yeah, and also that is very adult-centred in terms of, I am the expert and you need me to teach you how to make the bow and arrow. There is no other way of doing it. My way is the best, and I learnt it from a book, which also taught me that this is the way that I do it. That's not good, is it?
Well, it's not good because it's very limiting. It means that the only thing you can do is this, one way, rather than it's process, not product, isn't it? Is essentially it. But understanding the process, not just going. So an example of this thing on Facebook, the product isn't they have played with mud. That's not what's important. It's not important that they have played with mud.
Yeah.
It's important because of this happening and this happening and this happening and this,
Yeah.
And I think that is a really difficult thing when you start doing Forest School. You have this thing of I should do what Forest School is.
Completely, the pressure to use tools.
Yeah.
For no other reason other than, but I'm not really doing proper Forest School unless I get the knives out. It doesn't count, or I'm being a coward, or so I should really do it for my own. Those aren't the reasons.
They must have marshmallows. That's what Forest School is. Forest School is marshmallows. It is that when it is. I think.
But those things come with confidence and experience, don't they? It's almost like you have to have the confidence to do less.
Oh, and I'm not for a second saying I haven't ever looked at marshmallows as a 15-minute time killer at the end of a session when I've run out of stuff to do, and you just go...
or a positive experience when they've had a lot of negative ones.
Yeah, that's a much better thing than I was saying, yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, I do think that. Cool. Lovely job.
Bye!
If you like this podcast and want to support more episodes, you can donate through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Children of the Forest to show your support for the Forest School podcast.
And a massive thanks to our current patrons, Simon Kenny, Joe H, Brona Steed, Jude Vincent and Chrissy McEvoy. Thank you so much, guys. It really does mean a lot.